In another day of rapidly evolving situation, the President of the Republic of Korea, Yoon Suk Yeol, has been impeached, but he has vowed to fight for his political future as the Constitutional Court will determine within 6 months whether to sustain the impeachment or reinstate him as president. Now, 204 lawmakers voted to impeach Yoon and 85 voted against after opposition lawmakers tabled the first impeachment motion exactly a week ago. Park Chan-dae, the floor leader of the main opposition Democratic Party, has urged the court to proceed with the trial swiftly. If Yoon is thrown out of office, presidential elections must be held within 60 days. The impeachment vote sparked a jubilation among protesters outside Parliament, but also anger among Yoon supporters. This marks the second time in a decade that a South Korean leader has been impeached, the last one being Park Geun-hye in the winter of 2016 to 2017. So what exactly does the vote entail? What led to this political turmoil? And what's next for South Korea and the wider region? Welcome to a special weekend edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin, coming to you live from Beijing. For deeper insights, I'm pleased to be joined from Seoul by Shane Ham, the CGTN correspondent. From Beijing, Rong Ying, a senior research fellow of the China Institute of International Studies and chair professor at Sichuan University. From Seoul, South Korea, Hae-Sum Kim, the chair of Sun Trans Global Asia, a consulting firm, but also an expert advisor to Longham labor law firm. Also here in the studio, Aina Tangen, a senior fellow at Taihe Institute, who is also chairman of Asia Narratives, an online platform for Asian perspectives. The warmest welcome to all of our guests. Let me go to Shane for the very latest first. Shane, we understand that South Korea's Constitutional Court has 180 days to decide whether to remove President Yoon or not. So what will the court consider when deciding whether to uphold or reject the impeachment? And now that there are only 6 justices out of the 9 in the council, does it have to be a unanimous decision as the rule requires 6 votes minimum?
Well, if you look at the way South Korea's judiciary is set up, you have the Constitutional Court as well as the Supreme Court, the 2 highest courts in the land. The Constitutional Court's main role is to rule, as it's simply put, whether issues are constitutional or not. And so what these 9 judges will have to deliberate is whether these issues, whether they abide by or go against and violate the Constitution. And specifically, if you look at the impeachment motion that's being brought to the justices on the Constitutional Court, they'll have to determine whether President Yoon Suk Yeol's actions did constitute insurrection and whether they were illegal or not. Now, as you mentioned, right now, as it stands, there are only 6 members on the 9-member court. There are 3 vacancies, meaning that every vote is that much more meaningful. There will be more scrutiny for each judge's decision. And you're right, there needs to be a unanimous decision. So just one dissenting vote would put President Yoon back into office. So all eyes will be on the Constitutional Court moving forward. The acting Chief Justice of the court did come out today after the impeachment motion approval, saying that deliberations will begin on Monday. He'll hold his meetings starting on Monday, and decisions will be swift but also fair under the law.
Looking back at South Korea's history, it has a history of high-profile impeachments, and as I said, this marks the second time in less than a decade that a South Korean president has faced impeachment proceedings. What lessons can be drawn from past cases, and how might these precedents influence the current case?
You're right. South Korea has gone through now its 3rd presidential impeachment in this century alone. We, of course, had President Roh Moo-hyun, who was impeached by the parliament, but later reinstated after the Constitutional Court rejected the impeachment motion. On the other hand, we had President Park Geun-hye, who was impeached after being upheld by the Constitutional Court. All these cases, you would have to say, are probably like apples and oranges, where each case is different. If you want to compare with the President Park Geun-hye situation, it was largely a corruption case. But in this instance, we're talking about insurrection charges, which a lot of legal scholars that I've spoken to say that it's a little more clear-cut case, especially since we saw all those images unfold. And the more that these criminal investigations unfold, we're hearing more and more details about how involved President Yoon and of course the former defense minister were in the proceedings.
And finally, the impeachment came days after Yoon announced martial law, which sparked an uproar with opposition parties and the general public. The opposition parties tabled impeachment motion twice, which was successful the second time. So how do you foresee the relationship between the ruling and the opposition parties play out going forward?
Well, the ruling party really has to get its act together first before coming to any compromise with the opposition. If you look at the way leading up to this impeachment motion today, the ruling party is very divided. You have a pro-Yoon faction led by now the newly elected floor leader in Kwon Song-dong. On the other hand, you have the leader of the ruling party right now is Han Dong-hun, and you have a faction that follows the pro-Han faction. So there's this divide in the conservative wing of the country. As far as the liberal side, the opposition Democratic Party, which of course holds a big majority in the parliament, which is one reason why we got to this position in the first place, you could see that the Democratic Party being more emboldened to push their initiatives and policies forward, especially the reason they have a majority in the parliament is because they won a resounding victory back in April of this year, winning parliamentary elections, and they have the 192 seats at the moment. So as far as any sort of compromise or coming together between the two sides, especially with this power vacuum in the executive branch, it probably is likely that this will continue until we see possibly a new election or if President Yoon is reinstated.
Thank you very much, Shane, for giving us those updates from South Korea. Thank you. And before we start our studio discussions here, let's take a look back at Yoon's controversial presidency and the lead up to the political turmoil as prepared by our reporter Jack Barton.
A former South Korean prosecutor general with no political experience. Yoon Suk Yeol ran for president, pledging to fight corruption and economic inequality and to take a tougher stance on the DPRK. He won the top job in 2022 with the narrowest margin in the country's history. During Yoon's conservative rule, Pyongyang has made unprecedented advances with its weapons programs, including new ballistic missiles that can reach the United States and fast tactical missiles designed to defeat defense systems. With a reputation for being aloof, Yoon's presidency has been marred by controversies, including meddling in investigations and trying to stifle the media. In 2022, Yoon was caught cursing on a microphone after a meeting with US President Joe Biden. Yoon's wife has also been at the center of scandals, including her acceptance of an expensive handbag as a gift and allegations that she manipulated stocks.
Yoon's presidency has been marked by countless demonstrations calling for him to stand down. And even before martial law was declared, his popularity rating was only around 17%.
A public backlash saw the opposition Democratic Party win an overwhelming majority in the National Assembly earlier this year during midterm elections.
He tried to put on a martial law in an attempt to troubleshoot all this political difficulty.
Yoon is credited with rebuilding economic and security ties with Japan, which were at a post-war low when he came to office. However, Yoon's presidency will no doubt be remembered most for the introduction of martial law that briefly plunged South Korea back into the dark days of dictatorship. Jack Barton, CGTN, Seoul.
Let's get down to our discussion, and I want to start with Kim in South Korea. Help us understand exactly in what kind of stage are we in terms of the development of the situation. What does the impeachment mean exactly for Yoon? He's still president, but he's been impeached, but there could be some uncertainty going forward.
Yes, President Yoon's impeachment was caused by his announcement of martial law. But the martial law can only be announced by the president when the country is in high risk by war or civil war or attacked by other country, things like that. But he has made and declared the martial law when those things did not happen in Korea. And especially his reason of announcing martial law is to investigate or the National Assembly Parliament members. And these are the reasons why he said that he has announced martial law. And he believes that the country needs to settle down unanimously and settle down the national economy into a stable situation. But this was against the large part of Korean people who was criticizing that it's not the time for the president to announce the martial law because it's peaceful situation and everything is normal. So,
all right. Yeah, all right.
Yes.
Let's leave it there for the time being. Aina and Professor Rong, let's talk about, because for us watching from here in China, the situation has definitely been very chaos and developing very rapidly. We're hearing two different voices. One is saying South Korea's democracy is not working. The other saying it is working. That's why the impeachment is in motion. Mr. Rong, let me come to you first. Exactly what is your answer, yes or no?
Well, I don't think the problem South Korea has is the problem of democracy. Rather, I think it is a problem that how democracy or democratic the president, the politician or the institution is working. So my answer is, let us see that how the final act of this drama is going to be out. If the Constitutional Court did does make the decision based on legal argument rather political sort of consideration, I would say in the final analysis, the democracy in South Korea is working. Having said that, I don't think the problem we're having in South Korea is a problem of democracy. Rather, as I said, is democracy, democratic means or institutions, how they are being used for good or for political or personal interest of these politicians.
Yeah, well, we've heard some people are saying if the democracy is working, if the political institutions are working, you wouldn't have one president being impeached after another in a matter of, let's say, 20 years. We've had 3 cases. Why are voting these incompetent people into place if you only find out later and shortly after they come into office? Aina, what is your view?
Well, there's only been 3 presidents who haven't gone to jail in the last 30 years, and that points to some sort of systemic issue. I've heard everything from interference from the U.S. It's an occupied country in the sense that there are troops there. The U.S. can take over the defense of the country if they deem that there is a threat. But you know, the fact is that their campaigns take money, and in almost all instances, you hear corruption over and over again. You heard that with the situation with the chairables supporting Samsung. He went to jail. It's kind of an odd thing that everybody knows that you need money to get elected, and then when they get the money illegally, then they're sent to jail. So that is one part. This is a completely separate issue. This is somebody who is, it looks factually, when you hear testimony that somebody was ordered to drag the legislatures out of the parliament so that they could not vote. That will be very persuasive evidence that this was not simply a president acting on behalf of the best interests of the country.
But you're supposed to elect the most presidential person into office, and it seems that the kind of thing that has unfolded over the past week is not very presidential. I mean, it caught people by surprise that he would make such a decision. Mr. Rong, were you surprised by what you saw since December the 3rd, that he would go and make that kind of decision, you know, announcing martial law when the country was not in the kind of context where martial law is warranted?
Yeah, that is exactly what we are going to have, the contention, I think, in at the Constitutional Court. I hope that these justices will be able to answer this question. That is, while the President Yoon, he defends himself by saying that he has a sort of a power as a president at his discretion to announce or to impose a kind of martial law according to his understanding. But as the Korean speaker said, that it all depends on, there are circumstances, there are understanding, interpretation, what circumstances lead to that. And that related, to answer your question, it is a problem. I mean, the problem we are having, or the chaos we are having in South Korea, is it because of the system, or it is because of an exercise of the system? I think we may have to make a difference. I would just want to say, personally, I feel that democracy is a good thing. That China don't have any problem with democracy.
No, that's not why I asked this question.
The problem we are having, or South Korea having, is that democracy means, or democracy is abused or misused for, I mean,
my original question was, is democracy working in South Korea? That was my question. Yeah. Anyway, let's not get tangled up on this issue, because that's not what I want to really go into. I'm really curious about, besides the systemic issues that South Korea may have as a polity, as a country, what Mr. Yoon has been having is this fluctuating and eventually declining popularity, approval rating. We've heard from Jack Barton's package there. And I want to go to Ms. Kim. For the South Korean, from your perspective, why has Yoon lost the support of the general public?
There are several reasons why he lost popularity from the general public. First of all, there was as the commentator previously said, there's some unjustifiable reasons why his wife's several reasons illegal. For example, the stock manipulation or accepting some luxury goods, things like that. And the parliament has passed a bill to investigate President Yoon's wife, but he has been rejecting all those bills more than 25 times. That's one of the reasons. And also, he did not respect the parliament decision. Since his role as a president, so he was always against the ruling opposition party, because they occupied the majority seat, and the ruling party only gained 108 seats, which is the minority party.
Right. So
this is why it's very difficult for him to govern the cabinet, because his suggestion of any bill or any decision was always blocked by the large majority party.
Yeah. Ms. Kim, let me interrupt you there. I find this quite interesting on the foreign policy front. I'm sure there are various issues that people have a problem with, but the impeachment motion on December the 4th had this as conclusion, which is about Mr. Yoon's foreign policy. It says that Yoon has neglected geopolitical balance, antagonizing North Korea, China, and Russia, adhering to a bizarre Japan-centered foreign policy, and appointing pro-Japan individuals to key government positions, thereby causing isolation in Northeast Asia and triggering a crisis of war, abandoning his duty to protect national security and the people. How objective is this conclusion, observing from your perspective?
Yes, actually, the tragedy for Korea is every time the president change, their diplomacy seems to be going to the far extreme different direction. For example, the previous President Moon, was quite having the diplomacy close with the countries like China or Russia and those countries. But the president, as soon as President Yoon has gained the power, he was going to a totally different direction, which is very close with just Japan, as you said. But not. It's okay if we are having good diplomatic relationship with Japan, but neglecting other countries like China or Russia, because we need to diversify the diplomatic relationship with other countries, especially because we are a divided nation and we have to deal with North Korea. And in order to deal with North Korea, we need to have a stable diplomatic relationship with the countries like Russia or China, because we need the help from them.
I see.
Dealing with,
I see.
North
Thank you.
Korea.
I want to save some time for my guests here in the studio. Sorry for interrupting you, Ms. Kim. But Mr. Rong, how do you look at the kind of backlash and the reaction that his Mr. Yoon's so-called value diplomacy is having? Is that one of the major reasons why he is facing the turmoil now, or the unpopularity?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors constitute the unpopularity or the change from most popular politicians. Remember, he's a rising star. He joined politics very late, just in a few years' time. And to now the most unpopular and one of the president that have been impeached in Korean modern history. Economic issues, certainly diplomatic mistakes or missteps, others. And I think, at least by reading the press reports, his character, his way of not connecting the public, and more importantly, I think his so-called uncompromised characters that does not want to listen or turn to the other voices, views, is something I think a factor we have to take into account. Diplomatically, I very much agree with Ms. King's views that South Korea has always been very proud about its kind of a sense of balance, where because of its unenviable environment, where I think South Korea have to strike a balance among
very delicate
ones, and also out of its own strategic interests, not swayed by one or two country or one of the two interests, politicians' views. So all in all, I think we have a very sort of dramatic changes out of the combination of several factors. But I think the announcement, the ill-advised announcement of martial law by President Yoon is I think the last
trigger,
the last straw that for his problem.
I know your take in terms of foreign policy, that the going to extreme, ignoring the legitimate needs and interests of South Korea's interests.
Well, the turn towards Japan is not popular. The issue of comfort women is still there. The non-apologies, the visits to the Yakushuni shrine. These are all things that are presented by the majority of Korean people. They don't feel that Japan has shown true remorse. Then you get into the economic issue. He tried to blame China within the last week, saying that China was responsible for Korea's economic problems. He also tried to say that North Korea is the problem. It seems everything's the problem except him. Remember, this is a man who ran. He prosecuted President Park. He ran on this anti-corruption drive, and yet he's refused to investigate his own wife and refused 25 attempts to appoint prosecutors who would look into the case. His failings are really about populism. He thought he could just get in with a message that he's a tough, strong guy and was going to take action. This was in contrast to Moon, who was seen as a little bit weak and kind of in between. But he's also lauded in Washington. He was called by the press the dream president for Biden's administration.
So that leads me to my next question and final question to each and every one of you, to Ms. Kim first. What will be the implication of the transition, the very much uncertain transition that we're going to see over the next 6 months, let's say, in terms of regional political balance, in terms of geopolitics? What is your guess, Ms. Kim?
Yes, I personally believe and concerned about our country because at the moment we don't have a president. And when the impeachment is accepted by the Constitutional Court, then as soon as they decide that and pass the decision, then we can have the election within 60 days of to elect a new president. But as you know that the U.S. Trump will be again the government,
right?
And we need to deal with all these new leaders globally in the U.S. and we have to reinstate the relationship with China. Actually, President Yoon was going to send his secretary, who was working for him, to be the ambassador in China, but that is still uncertain. So without having an ambassador, Korean ambassador in China, and also dealing with the U.S. New government, is a very sensitive issue, and we have to be very prepared because all the other countries are, preparing for the next government, worldwide.
Right.
So we hope that this impeachment process can be settled very quickly, and we have a new president so that we can reinstate the diplomatic relationship with all these global leaders.
Okay.
And countries.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Kim. Aina, I give you 30 seconds if you can. What should we expect over the next half year?
Absolutely nothing. No, it's not half year. It's when the Constitutional Court rules. I think it'll be fairly quickly. They feel the pressure as well. Everything that Ms. Kim said is correct. But don't expect anything to happen. The acting president, because Yoon has no powers now, all his powers are gone until this is resolved. He is not in a strong position, so I doubt much will happen.
Mr. Rong, can we expect to see a recalibration of Korea's relationship with China, foreign policy with China, in the near future? Yes or no, or half-half?
Well, we certainly are hopeful that the development, political sort of changes would lead to a reconsideration of the need for recalibration.
Okay. We'll keep a close watch on the situation. Thank you so much. Many thanks to Hae-Sam Kim, Chair of Suntrends Global Asia, Rong Ying here in the studio, Senior Research Fellow of the China Institute of International Studies, and Aina Tang, Senior Fellow at Taihe Institute and Chairman of Asian Narratives. Thank you so much. With that, we come to the end of this special edition of The Point, weekend edition of The Point with me, Li Xin, coming to you live from Beijing. As usual, follow us on social media. And on behalf of the whole team, thank you for watching. You've got The Point.